I thought I would do a few things. Well, I could probably do this type of series forever. But anyways, a few other things I thought I would show in here. For example, gizmos. I think I've already got mine turned down. But this is one of those things that's relatively annoying, especially when you first open a project and you have, I don't know, we'll say FSMs. You put FSMs on things and you have, I don't know, cubes, places, and they have FSMs, and just everything's got FSMs or whatever, right? There's different things. But you have these symbols everywhere, right? And you get them on tons of different stuff. Like there's a light symbol, and sometimes it's kind of nice because you can click on those, right? Like if this cube was, like if you couldn't see this cube, you can still at least access it, other than just going to the hierarchy. But at the same time, it's kind of a pain. Like when you if you're in, like, I don't know, trying to set up a weapon maybe or whatever, I don't know, it's a pain. And if I go to the gizmos, well, you can just flat out turn that stuff down from the 3D. But most of the time, I just take it and go like that. I just shrink it right down. There's various things like you can turn off, so you can be specific to various things. But usually I take the icon and just shrink them right down and get rid of them. So that's kind of one thing. I thought I would show that because it's just kind of one of those things. I think one of the other things, I think it's a common thing, I suppose you could say, is when you have animation timing. Okay, so in my animator here, there's various things that happen. Apparently I have a trigger called an attack, and I use a blend tree. So, alright, maybe I'll do this with maybe walking. Actually, you know what, just so I don't get all crazy and confuse things, let's make a new animator controller. And actually, since I've done that, if I have, well, an animator controller and I stick a movement animation, we'll say walk. I guess any walk will do. But I use the pistol walks because I know they're root motion. Yeah, okay, whatever. So this person right now, if I hit play on them, like they only have the one clip, and that's what it's going to default into. And you can see they're walking. They're flying in the air, but they're just playing the animation. I turned on root motion, so they're moving with the animation. It's probably also something I should cover. Like if I turn off root motion, you have a treadmill effect, and now you have to control them moving. Root motion it's based off of those. Now animations need to be set up for root motion. Not all animations can do it. I'm gonna just align this here. But I thought I would show something. So here we have an animation. If I click on that, I'm gonna go to the FBX file here, And here I can see all sorts of data on this thing, right? And if I go over to this where it says events, I can open that up. I'm going to stop that. Now I can just scrub back and forth. I could say, I could go and do footstep sounds if I want them to be relatively realistic on timing. And I could, right, I could say, okay, right there, right there. Let's send an event, and we're using PlayMaker, so we want to use send event. Make sure the S and the E are capitalized, and let's say footstep. I'll scrub again a little farther, and right there. Let's send event and call it also footstep. And then it ends. So that's all we have to do. I'm going to hit apply. So now I have these two events called footstep. Now if I go over here, let's add a audio source. If you ever want 2D to 3D sounds, keep in mind that is this thing right here, 3D. And then of course the 3D sound settings. Right now we got this weird setting. I usually go like say linear, a distance of 50. Now if you actually look around, my lighting is just ballistically white. This ball here is that distance, is that sound distance. Right, so if I go 10, okay, now if I put the camera, we'll say right here. So it should be out of the sound. So we won't hear it, and as they actually walk closer, we'll hear the steps. So how do we actually play the steps? So I have an FSM. So we had an event called footstep. And I don't think you have to make those global. I always do, but I'm going to say footstep. Be careful not to have like, oh, you're gonna run here and do this, and you're running the same event in various places, because when something's called, especially when it's marked as global, when that global's called, it will try to call everything here, and FSMs don't work that way very well, so don't do that. It's a very easy way. I have caught myself doing things like that, which if you have an event here, and we'll play a footstep sound. Okay. And say I wait for the end of clip, it will wait and then call this, which is technically this. So it calls this and goes right back to here and goes here, and it'll just. And if there's no timing on things, you'll have an infinite loop very, very, very quickly. So don't do that, right? Be really careful when you're running global events. Like I'm calling it in. That's the only place I'm going to use this event now is in this FSM is right here. I'm not going to call it in a few million other places. Now, what if I want this sound to be a little more, not just this sound, doing that over and over and over and over and over again, get pretty boring. So this is a tip, is if I make a variable, and if you don't know what arrays are, they are, oh my god, I'm gonna lose it. No, stop. They're more or less just a list of things. So this is now an array of floats, and floats are just numbers. I want an array of, say, audio clips. So now I can say I want 5, and I can just drag in. We want this one, this one, we'll say 3 and 4. Now we have all these different steps. So instead of doing this, I'm going to create a variable called step. I just created it. It's now over here. Not steps, it's step. It's just an audio clip variable. But now I can do array get random. Pick from steps, store this random into my step. And then I'm using step to play. So now we're going to do a random event. Now if you want to get even fancier, random float, and this is a beautiful way to really add variation. And I'm going to go say from 0.9 to 1.06. So very, very small amounts here. And I'm going to store this into a new variable, a new float variable called pitch. So we're taking a random sound from our array of sounds, our list of sounds, and I'm making a random float every time this event is called, storing it in the pitch. Now, let's see if I have a pitch. I do have a pitch. Okay, I wasn't too sure if this was going to be here. I can set the audio pitch to pitch. So we're going to adjust the pitch just slightly every time this is called. Right, so now if I hit play, now we shouldn't hear anything because we have a 3D sound. Right? But that's kind of how that works. And it's, say, like I don't have much of a distance, like I put. All right, I'm going to keep it down into the scene view so I can watch this. I usually like to watch the scene view, have the game view just kind of doing whatever. So getting louder. But it's not the same sound each time. All right, and if I go into that, you can see it. The pitch is getting just altered just slightly each time, and we're choosing a different step. All right, so it's a very easy way to all of a sudden make nice footstep sounds just based on that. Pretty simple thing to set up. What else do we have here? I wanted to show. So there's that. Footsteps, root motion. If you don't use root motion, you have to, like I said, you have to move them a different way. Whether you're using set velocity or control remove or translate, there's always options. Lots of times I actually like to use root motion, so I don't use the velocity and I don't use translate and I won't use other things. I'll use the root motion, and it looks nice. It is a little more difficult to control things and set things up that way, but it is a nice looking system. So I think one of the other things I should probably show, because this is one of those tricky ones where if you look at, what all can we do with PlayMaker, and you have these variables. You can create these variables. One thing that is, I think, especially when you're new, is you don't know, and it's an extremely powerful thing, is object type. What is an object? An object can be pretty much anything. So, for example, this could be a rigid body, right? So I can now tell it, okay, what object type do you want? So I can now go into this list. Most things that you're going to deal with are under the Unity engine, right? So I can say it's a collider. I could say it's a camera. It's an audio listener. It's an audio clip. I mean, we have audio clips in the PlayMaker stuff, but animation clips, right? It could be a light. It could be anything that's in Unity. It could be, right? It could be scripts, right? So if you have a script somewhere from a third-party plugin or whatever the case may be, and you want to access it, you can make a variable of that script, right? So this is now a rigid body. Now there are rigid body actions, but you know, this is just an example, right? So I don't actually have a rigid body. Let's put a rigid body on. Now the character's probably going to fall over. Well, especially if I put a capsule on them, they actually have physical, right? Because now I look, my capsule is complete garbage sitting there. I'm going to turn this light down. No, apparently I'm going to not turn the light down. Where's my main ground here? Do I not have a main ground? Oh, is that why my lighting is so crazy? Alright, well, let's create a terrain. Might look a little better. I could probably actually put my character on the ground now, at least. It'll look a little better. But anyways, now, yeah, we have this capsule, so we can have physical, you know, things can actually hit me now. But I mean, look, it's sitting so poorly. So often, 1.8 is a good size. The middle of the character is going to be, well, half of the height. Usually, not all the time. So now we have, this is for our collisions, right? Just ever so slightly above the toes, or the bottom of the feet, I should say. So it's saying it's using gravity. Gravity is, it'll fall. It's in the gravity simulations. Climatic is, it's not. It's just gonna do whatever you tell it to do. So actually, well, if I put it on here, the player's just gonna fall over, right? They're gonna be, or they should just fall over. Use gravity. No, maybe they won't yet. If I move them a bit. Oh, okay. Well, I had to force it a bit, but whatever. They fell over. You can freeze rotations, and quite often you'll find, especially if you're using gravity, to freeze the X and the Z. So that way you're not getting these weird, stupid angles if you bump into a wall or you jump off something. You can spin this way freely, but it's this way that is taken kind of out of the gravity, right? Right. But now, I mean, if I take the character and lift them up, they drop down. If I turn this off, they sit there, right? It's kind of it's almost the same thing as just doing that. So it's kinetic. So they can now interact with, say, if I add a rigid body to this thing. So this thing is in the gravity world. And I'm going to stick it right over their head. Lift it up. So they're in physics and the player's in kinematic, so I can hit them, and this thing is affected by this person. I mean, other than the collision itself, it's not being pushed around, so you have that as well. Discrete and to the continuous. I mean, if you really want fast collisions, don't go too fast. Fast things don't work well when it comes to trying to find things, and it's because really, if you take a cube and this thing is actually, I can probably show you this. You can physically see this. I'm just going to translate this by using translate. There it is. And if I move forward, space self, and if I move at, say, 20, right now, if I hit play, you can watch this thing move, and it looks fine. But if I pause it, so we're paused in one frame of time right now. And if I say, you know what, let's go to the very next frame. We're not skipping 2 frames, we're not skipping 3 frames, we're going to the next frame. Watch what this cube does for where it's at. It's there. Okay? It's moving. So, I mean, granted, on a frame to frame thing, it looks relatively choppy. Now, for us, for the naked eye, it looks fine. Okay? Where the issue comes in, if things are going too fast, and I'll exaggerate this a bit, let's go to a speed of 80, and I'm just going to pause this right away, is now, for where we're at, if I hit next frame, he moved there. He went there, right? So technically, I mean, it might look that way when the game is playing, but it's not. And it's this block here. See where, okay, I've stuck it right in front. Logically, you would assume if this cube is moving quickly, it's going to smash through that. But he doesn't. The next frame, he never touched it. He's in this spot now, right? He's jumping. He's doing that because he's trying to maintain 80 units of speed per second flying forward. So he's skipping that stuff. Right? And that's a common issue that a lot of people will see. Right? And I could even demonstrate that probably a little better. Let's make that up a little bigger, and let's make him, we'll say, a trigger, and let's create another cube here with a rigid body so we can interact with the trigger. Add a FSM, and we'll just give it a on trigger enter. We're not going to do anything with it, but just an on trigger enter. Okay, so I'm going to take him, I'll probably scale him down so he's a little thinner anyways. Right, so this guy here, technically, he should trigger him. Right, so his logic's running. He's skipping along frame by frame. And if I take this guy and I'm just going to put him close, I don't want them touching yet. So logically, he should go through him, right? But he doesn't. The event never fired. But if I hit play, now if I happen to hit pause and play. Now if this cube happens to actually hit it as he's more or less teleporting around, we should get that event. So there it goes. It triggered that time. But it hit it, right? So the high speed, because of that high speed and where the thing has to go to maintain that high speed frame by frame, you gotta be careful. And this might be slightly different now if I see, let's say, collision enter. And I'm going to put him to continuous, and I can take this guy. He's not that, but we can give him a rigid body. Instead of translate, let's go velocity. We're going to set velocity on the Z. Every frame. First we'll try 30. And if I hit play, he's just going to fly at it, and he just hit it. And that was it. Right? And over here, oh, we didn't get a collision event. Why not? odd. I would have figured we would have had a collision event, and that's probably due to project settings, physics. No, it is on. Enable all contact pairs. Alright, so let's slow him down. Really slow. Oh, right. Well, you know the whole falling thing? Yeah. Let's turn that so it doesn't just tumble. Right. Okay, so now there's a collision. I'm also going to freeze his Y, so it doesn't actually drop. So we have a collision there. Now if I go to him and speed him up, right, let's go 40. He's going to just slam into that, and we had the event fire. But if I start taking this guy up too quick, right, I can go 120 with him. Physics, oh, he still got it. He didn't technically stop him, but he did catch the event. So let's hit pause and watch that frame by frame. All right, so he's moving. Okay, I'm just going to move him just so I'm going to make sure he skips over it. That was pretty close. Right, but same kind of thing happened there, right? I mean, he skipped over it. So if I don't know, this should technically help. I don't know if it's going to be enough to save this little cube from getting hit. All right, so let's take this cube and just move him over so he skips over it. No, wasn't enough. All right, so that's something you got to be aware of. If you're thinking about, oh, I'm going to make a game and I want shooting stuff and I want to shoot arrows and I want to shoot bullets and I want them to actually fly and ricochet and I want them to move at bullet-like speed, it's just not really a physical possibility. You can fake it in a lot of different ways, but it's hard to actually say, you know what, let's just have this thing collide at a high speed. It's just not a very realistic expectation. Right, so there, well, I said it caught it there. Let's try that one more time. Now that I put him on the continuous, he should be a little better. So let's skip him. And skip. Oh, look at that. He caught it. He skipped. Got pushed back. And I think that's one of the things that causes that is on this guy, right? So I'm going to make this guy a little thinner. Right, so I'm going to duplicate him just to make sure. Right, so the continuous on stuff, I believe it is actually the fastest way to actually collide with things. But you see how I've got this interpolation on? That is a way to help calculate as it's traveling, saying, okay, we were here and we're going here on the next frame. You know, we need to more or less figure that out and do the calculations from point A to point B. Right, but that's, I mean, it's pretty quick for this box. I mean, it's still nowhere near bullet speed, but I mean, it's doing a lot better than the trigger did, anyways. Right? Actually, I'm kind of impressed. I even got the 200 and it still collided. Oh man, look at this thing go, just flying. I still got a collision. I'm actually really surprised at 500 velocity. Still though, you got to be really careful with those things, even though this, like, I swear to God, it's trying to prove me wrong right now, but still, like I said, the collision, what am I looking at? Where's my cube? That's my cube. Yeah, this continuous dynamic, like I said, I'm pretty sure it's the fastest thing. Like if I go back to discrete, it's probably going to skip right over it. And off it goes. Right, so that's the fastest thing, and this thing typically helps too a little bit. I don't know where that went, but it collided, so that's good. So that's kind of one thing. Now, the one thing I was actually going to show you though is on Lord Hunter, prior to getting into talking about this stuff, is we made that variable, right? That rigid body. Now this works with any kind of scripts that you can have as a variable, as long as they're a mono behavior. I can now get component of the owner, well, more or less stating I'm going to want a rigid body variable of the owner. So I'm more or less stating I want this rigid body. And now I can call methods on it. I can set properties on it. Where is my properties? There it is. Right, so I can call methods. Oh, I gotta say, okay, on the rigid body we want to call these methods. You can add forest, whatever, right? I mean, there's a lot of actions for these, but you know, there's some actions that aren't on here. So, but that is a way that you can manipulate third-party scripts, because you can make that variable type get component on it, and now I can adjust all sorts of whatever's on here, right? I can say, you know, is kinetic true, right? And if I turn it off on the player, I hit start, this will flip true, because that's what I'm doing here, right? It's now true. I've gotten its rigid body and I've told it to do so. So great way to do talks with third-party scripts. I mean, you can make custom actions, but in the beginning that's probably not going to be the easiest thing for you. So there's that. What else should we look at? One of the other things I like to do, because it's just a pain, is under this, and I think they've actually changed it so it's default off now. But if you ever see this thing's baking and things are kind of running slow for you, this auto generate, just turn it off. You know, eventually if you need to bake lighting, just turn it on then. But if you leave it on, pretty much anything you move around, it's going to want to be like, oh, I need to stop and think and do things. And it's just kind of slow and stupid, and it's a pain in the ass. So I just usually turn it off until I need it. Then I turn it on. If you ever want, what else should we look at? Let's look at something like this. Let's make a couple big cubes, and let's mark them as they're just totally static. And I'm going to stick them over here. And I'll make a couple other ones that are even bigger. Okay, and then I'm going to make a couple that are small. And I'm going to stick them back here. All right. Now the camera, I want to make sure it's lined up and looking at this stuff. And what I'm going to do is, this is a trick, and it works really well for dungeons and stuff. And it's really actually not the easiest thing to actually set up, that's for sure. Is occlusion culling. So there's some great third-party assets that actually do this really, really well. But this is, and you can create areas. You don't have to create areas. You can literally just do the whole thing on its own and just hit bake. Where is my occlusion area? Oh, frick, I'm like inside of it. All right, let's stick this over this area. And I said you don't technically need to use that. You can just more or less hit bake and it should just work. So is volume view. So now I go over and I'm going to hit bake. And it does this thing. It's going to bake. Is it done? I think it might already be done. And there's a lot of things you can play with this one. And I should be able to now visualize that. If I look at where is my occlusion? There we go. Like you can see visibility lines, portals. Don't worry about that. So this camera now, I should be able to, okay, there, it kind of does it. So if the camera's over here, see how some of these blocks are now gone? Right, and as I move around, see how it fades, or completely disappears? So I mean, technically in game view down here, if you look, I mean, you can kind of always see everything, like everything's always there. Now Unity has a built-in occlusion culling system based on frustum culling. So when you have a bunch of trees and stuff that are over here behind you, they aren't rendered. But everything in front of the camera that the camera can see here gets rendered, right? Which of course hurts performance because you're trying to see everything. The idea of the occlusion culling, though, compared to the frustum culling, is if you can't see it because it's being occluded by something, then don't render it, right? So now we're rendering less things, which improves performance. So now some of these shouldn't, I don't know, I mean, I didn't play with any of the settings. Maybe I should have. All right, smallest occluder, maybe it's a 2, smallest hole, we'll say 0.1. Hopefully it'll take like 1,000,000 hours to go bake. Hopefully that's a little better now. Yeah, I think that's a little better. All right, so there are some things you can do with it. Right, and as you see, like, it's rendering things in and out. So it helps with performance. All right, let's stop that for a bit. All right, so we have a bunch of cubes, and that's occlusion culling, and they said then you also have frustrum culling, which is built in, like it's where's it? Yeah, the occlusion. Oh, that's the occlusion culling. All right, well then the frustrum culling is just built in. You can't turn it off, I don't think. Now with that said, if you were to combine all these meshes, it won't work. And if you combined all these meshes and you had one mesh and he was sitting over here and you were facing this way, these would still render because they're part of that same mesh. It also counts as if any of the shadows could potentially be, or the effects of the shadows could be within your frustrum. It's going to render the whole thing that's making the shadow. So the little things like that to keep in mind with that type of stuff. What else can we look at? Here's the profiler. This is a really, really great thing. If you're ever wondering why maybe performance sucks or something, like if I hit play, like there's nothing in here. Like the performance should be phenomenal. Let's go to analysis. Let's go back to this profile. So you see all this type of stuff happening. You see these weird squiggly lines. We don't know what the hell's happening. But I can now scroll around on this stuff, and I like to go to the raw hierarchy, I think it is. But I can say go to the player loop, right? This is your times. And I can see in the player's loop, fixed update physics, fixed update 0.2. Right, so it's looking at that type of stuff for, the late update 0.04. There's various things that are happening in here. And the cost of them. The editor itself right now is 6. So, I mean, if I reboot my Unity, this will actually drop down this one. Or if I, go into like full screen mode, right? If I can pull this right out. See, it's a fair bit lower because I didn't have any of this stuff going. Right. But there's a bunch of things that you'll be able to find in this as well. Possible things that was causing your issues. The other thing that you could also use is frame debugger. Let's say, for example, I can enable that, and I can now see what's causing all of my calls back and forth. So okay, we're drawing mesh. Oh, it's not the most well done thing, but okay, well, right, so we're drawing meshes, there's the train. What else we got? I really don't have much in the scene. It's more or less, okay, there's a skybox. But those are all different calls going back and forth to the well, to various things, mainly the GPU and all that. So I mean, you can look at various things, and this might tell you. So that draw mesh, because they're marked static, it's going to pull them all into one, unless that's the shadows. Okay, that's the shadows. Where's the actual mesh? Static mesh. Okay, these things. This will also tell you why this draw call can't be bashed with the previous one. The object is affected by multiple forward lights. You know, so things like that. You can get a bit of information from all that type of idea. Right, so I have point lights in here. So I said it'll help you trying to solve things. It's a tool. I mean, it's not going to solve it for you ultimately, but it is a tool. I don't know if I've covered that type of stuff. AI baking navigation. I think I have. Maybe I haven't. I don't know. What else can we look at? I don't know. I think that's probably pretty good. I mean, we covered some occlusion stuff and the gizmos and various other things, I suppose. I think I did lighting in the last one. But yeah, I don't know. Just some basic stuff. Oh yeah, I guess in the sounds and that, the collisions. And the events. That one's pretty solid. Very, very common, right? Because I mean, especially if you have like an attack, you can put an attack there to time it on your attack, and then when this triggers, you turn on your collider or you do your ray cast and stuff like that. But anyways, I think that's probably pretty good. I should probably get going. I'll leave you guys with that one. Talk to you guys later.